So this is further amplification of this flow of initiatives taken by the Government of India in terms of funding support. We have a fund of funds of rupees 10,000 crores with a corpus of rupees 10,000 crore for supporting startups. We have credit guarantee fund, we have tax exemption on capital gains, we have got now angel tax being removed, we have tax exemption for a few years, and if there are investments above fair market value, there are tax exemptions. We also have self-certification, we have got registrations with the government portal to ease the business for startups, and then there are several industry academia partnerships which we have considered in various phases of our discussion thus far. Now if you look at the Western and Japanese startup models, the Western startup model and even Japanese startup model is highly technology oriented. Most of the new technologies are still innovated in US, Europe and Japan. That is the foundation of the startup model. And the startups therefore are highly technology oriented. And thirdly, startups with groundbreaking technologies are able to convert themselves into very efficient startups and evolve into mega corporations. But if you see the pyramid of growth for the startup system in the West, we have got one, science and technology in universities. We also have adjunct entrepreneurial paths which are next to the best of the universities. We also have active faculty student participation in startup ecosystem. And there is also a kind of monitoring and self-evaluation system which is happening with these universities as to how their entrepreneurial systems are working. So one presentation here is referring to the state of Illinois. Illinois has got several universities which are engaged in science and technology, and for the last 10 years they have been publishing how their university model of entrepreneurship is supporting economic growth. So they are the engines of innovation and economic growth as per their self-assessment. Each year they support state's talent pipeline by 25,000 new STEM graduates, that is graduates in science, technology, engineering and mathematics. And more importantly, compared to our Indian situation, they drive discovery by investing as much as $2.4 billion on R&D activity. So this is a snapshot from the report of the Illinois University program on how the startup system is working. You will find that there have been 978 university supported startups that were founded between 2014 and 2018, which is a big number, out of which 155 were based exclusively on technology transfers from the university, and 823 had independent technologies. It doesn't mean that they didn't have technology transfers from other universities. Nevertheless, there were non-Illinois technology transfers or technology developments. Out of this, 32.8% were inactive, which again points to the fact that not every startup that has been put on development horizon would eventually succeed. But that 67% are active and have been successful is a much better number than the number we generally have, that 1 in 10 startups only will succeed. So this figure is significantly better, and one of the reasons why this figure is better probably is because of the technology backbone that is supporting the startup development. Out of that, 65% are still active and 1.6% have gone through acquisition. This is again a very important factor, that if startups demonstrate their worthwhileness to big companies, they are likely to be acquired. And they have created 3,000 jobs. They have been able to raise $1.24 billion in funding. And 80% of the startups are located in Illinois, which shows that the regional development of technology and regional development of startup activity has got merit in any geography. But if you look at how the startups are getting invested, you will find a completely different profile. In India, much of the investment in software takes place in the e-commerce and digitization areas, particularly in terms of the digitization of the process which are mechanical and which are physical. But if you look at the US situation, or probably even a Japanese situation or the EU situation, you will find that an overwhelming percentage of investments is getting made in the biomedical and biotechnology field, which is the driver and one of the very important aspects of Industry 4.0, which we discussed in one of the earlier sessions. Then of course software and IT follows, and followed again by healthcare and social services. Retail, wholesale goods, e-commerce, which is the dominant case in our system, ranks fourth. So this is an expanded view of how the investments in the state of Illinois is working out. You will find that $583 million out of the total $1.24 billion of investment has been made into the biomedical and biotechnology field, which is 47%, which is a strong boost to how the industry would move in terms of startup development. And many of these industries which we have listed here, biomedical, biotechnology, retail, wholesale, goods, e-commerce, transportation, healthcare and social services, software and IT, accommodation and food services, agriculture, these are all very important areas of investment. So it is important that India also has a startup funding analysis which tracks the industries where the new funding is going and whether there needs to be a redistribution of funding interest across industries. So we need to take a cue from what has been happening in the West and see how we can achieve a multiplier effect in startup development in India. Fundamentally, at the base level, we should have more STEM graduates nationally. STEM graduates who are skill and technology oriented and not only merely employable, but people who have got the capabilities to transform their science and technological education into a product or service very effectively in a startup situation. Secondly, more universities should continue to emphasize leading edge scientific and technological innovation. While there is every need to enhance liberal arts education and provide more humanities and social science exposure to students of science and technology, so that what we have would be a profile of very well balanced individual, the core of universities emphasizing leading edge science and technology, that cannot be ignored. Third one is greater funding for leading edge startups and more startups in the overall. So at one level we have national students who would form the talent to the large extent. Then we also should have international students, and we should also have gender diversity in this student population which is entering this process pipeline. Then we should have universities which are providing an anchor for the ideas to be converted into startups. We should have angel investors who are associated with the universities, and we could also have venture capital firms having strong linkages with institutional incubator systems. Right now, angel and venture capital systems are linked more to startups directly rather than to universities. Increasingly, we are seeing initiatives like Deshpande, Chris Gopal Krishnan Institute for Innovation. There are several other innovation related activities that are happening in higher educational institutions which are into the educational system so that startups could be supported better. Again, we have got a lot of work to do in transforming the education system which is oriented towards degrees and jobs, and to some extent into academic research, into practice oriented, startup oriented Western startup education system model. Not all techno entrepreneurs in the West have been or are keen to develop their startup enterprises into mega enterprises. We have got this flow chart which shows that when a startup comes into being, there are a few options. One, scale up on own, which is a good thing to happen, but not in all cases that scale up on own happens. The second one is the central one which we see here, monetization of technology. The other one is to get acquired as a whole, as a company, as a startup. That is the other option available. And the fourth option is to be inactive or mothball the developments until a better day comes or until the technology itself is refurbished or rejuvenated. So as a startup, we have got different ways of looking at it. Philosophically, in India, ownership and management have been treated very important and significantly together. As a result, there has always been an emphasis on mentoring the startup by the promoter, managing the startup by the promoter, and finally leading the startup by the promoter to as long an extent as possible. But that doesn't work out at all phases. Ownership and management could be very integral and together in the early phase and early growth phase, but not necessarily appropriate, and could even be expendable when the startups become leading mainstream companies in the growth or maturity phases. So that's the Western model, and when we look at the Western model and when we absorb the best facets, we should also be open to absorbing the best facet which I mentioned of keeping ownership and management separate after the early targets of entrepreneur are achieved. So let's switch tracks to Japanese startup models, how they work. The techno entrepreneurs in Japan are different. They typically tend to innovate for larger industrial firms, trading groups, or for large universities. And in this process, they create multi-level business arrangements. A study of Japanese history of startups has revealed that the Japanese startups typically grow with the larger firms, or they grow with the larger trading houses like Sumitomo and Mitsui. And they also have got support from the governmental systems, as we will consider later. And as a result of this multifaceted support and also the emphasis on technology, these entrepreneurs are able to become global entrepreneurs in their own right. So when we look at big companies which are in various fields in startup area, you will realize how the so-called component manufacturers have become global component manufacturers in the Japanese system. So the Japanese startups are typically committed to their technologies. They are very focused, and then they try to achieve perfection in their technologies, and groups are evolved around the technological anchors. And the positive synergy that accrues between the component maker or the ancillary supplier and the parent corporation with the linkage of technology helps them become bigger. There is a synergy. And as opposed to the Western system, larger firms in Japan are respectful of the origins of the small firms, and there is no intention or an aggression to acquire biotech companies or acquire component suppliers and become bigger in their own way. So large firms keep a safe and respectful distance from the smaller startups and allow them to be independent and allow them to grow. Then the accent is also on allowing development of those technologies within the startup system, making them more mature and more innovative rather than making them more attractive for acquisition. So as a result, what you have is a more virtuous startup growing into bigger startup, growing into a major conglomerate of startup ecosystem, rather than big companies taking smaller startups into their ecosystem, and then again new startups have to come up. So there is a big difference in the way the Japanese ecosystem operates with reference to the startups. But as a result of this respectful way of coexistence of small startups in a technologically innovative way, along with the big companies also technologically innovative, we have got technological innovation across the value chain, which is self-sustaining. And it also is providing the motive force for the startups to remain independent yet be collaborative within the overall production and development network. We will also switch tracks to look at how the Global Entrepreneurship Index 2018 ranks our country along with other countries. JD covers more countries than what GEM covers, and this study is done by the Global Entrepreneurship and Development Institute along with the Global Entrepreneurship Network. It also publishes annually the Global Entrepreneurship Index. So JD focuses on individual entrepreneurial approaches, while GEM gives large weightage to factors of entrepreneurial ecosystem. So whereas GEM is factor driven, JD is individual entrepreneurial development. And in doing this analysis, like GEM, JD also concludes that countries in the innovation-led startup phase lead entrepreneurship globally and within each region. So innovation is considered the main important factor in boosting startup across nations. Global Entrepreneurship Index also establishes that global entrepreneurship is positively correlated with other national development measures, namely Global Competitiveness Index, Index of Economic Freedom, and Ease of Doing Business. Again, these indexes have been mentioned in the earlier review as well. So there are 14 pillars based on which the Global Entrepreneurship Index is ranked. One, how do people perceive the opportunity? What are the kind of startup skills that are available in a nation? What is the level of risk acceptance in the nation? Are individuals willing to take the risk of starting a business? Is the environment that is available relatively low risk environment, or do unstable institutions add additional risks to starting a business? Networking. Do entrepreneurs have a network of their own, knowing each other, and how geographically located and concentrated are the networks? For example, in California you have a network. Does India have a network like that? And we do have, like Bangalore, we have Gurugram, we have Pune, we have Hyderabad. So networking is one area of inquiry by the Gen. Then what kind of cultural support that is available in the country for entrepreneurship development? Then the sixth pillar is opportunity perception. Are entrepreneurs fascinated by the opportunity or pushed into entrepreneurship by lack of opportunities? So in the session on entrepreneurship and employment, we consider how lack of formal job opportunities act as negative motivation for people to become entrepreneurs. Therefore, true blood entrepreneurial system should require entrepreneurs who are engaged by the opportunity rather than motivated by lack of opportunity for employment. That is one important pillar. Technology absorption. Is the technology development sector large enough to fund technological impulses of various startup companies, and also business, are they ready to absorb these new technologies? Human capital. Are entrepreneurs highly educated, well trained in business, and are able to move freely in the labor market? Competition. Are entrepreneurs able to create unique products and services and are able to enter the markets with them? Another question, product innovation. How is the country poised in terms of development of new products, and how these new products are getting integrated in terms of technology into the actual deliverable products in the marketplace? And what kind of process innovation supplements product innovation? Do businesses use new technology, and are they able to access high quality human capital in the STEM fields? High growth. What is the perspective of industry in terms of growth? They want to grow fast. Do they have the strategic capability to achieve this growth? Then internationalization. Do entrepreneurs want to remain cocooned in their domestic economies, or they want to enter global markets? And is the economy complex enough or developed enough to provide products and ideas which could find a place in the global value chain? The 14th pillar is risk capital. Is capital available from both individual and institutional investors? So from the first pillar of opportunity perception to the 14th pillar of risk capital, not necessarily in any order of importance, we have 14 aspects which we measure entrepreneurial capability of a nation. So the Global Entrepreneurship Index looks at the rank of 16 countries in this case out of the 138 countries which the survey has covered, and you will find that India has a rank which is not as high as one would like to have. We have a score of 28% and we have a rank of 68. Again, it is coming midway in terms of the overall 138 ranks we have in this study. United States ranked the highest with a global rank of 1 and score of 84%. Switzerland at 80%, Canada 79%, United Kingdom 78%. We have got amongst the BRIC countries, China at 43 ahead of us, score of 41%, India 68 at 28%, South Africa ahead of us with a score of 33% and rank of 57, Russia behind us with a score of 25% and rank of 78, and Brazil probably the lowest with a score of 20% and global rank of 98. So from an Indian perspective, our being in the bottom half of Global Entrepreneurship Index is not a comfortable situation. Being a few scores and ranks lower than China is also not helpful. Compared to the developed world, the gap in terms of standalone score as well as in relative ranking is worrisome and needs to be bridged, as India aspires to be and certainly will be the third largest global economy by scale in future. So what is, again I would emphasize, for us to bridge this gap, we need a hybrid startup model. And the startup models are of three types. One, startups that make better use of available technology. So digital computerization is there. Startups are using better use of the available technology through apps and the various digital parameters. There are startups which make their operations more competitive, more efficient. And the third one is startups that access or create new market segments. Ideally, if a startup works in the intersection of all these three circles, that is a startup which is technologically more efficient, operationally more competitive, and also market creative rather than just market seeking, that startup would be really a hybrid startup having the best of the features of these three models. So how do we get to that? Each class of firms could have its own ideas. First, we should have innovative technologists who will be able to achieve early proof of concept for the minimum viable product. People who will be able to scale up the product from the idea stage to the prototype stage to the minimum viable product and finally to the ultimate desirable product, a concept which we considered earlier. How do we then monetize through commercialization? The second group is creative marketers who can in-license product, services and components and who can outsource manufacturing so that they will be in a position to reach the market earlier. And the third group is the operations leaders who are very cost competitive in whatever they do and they know how to secure a foothold in the market and how to grow the market. If the companies have got these three groups of people, it would enable such startup firms build their valuation profiles in ways appropriate to their competencies. So what should be the hybrid model in terms of the collaborative networking? Inorganic relationships across the value chain, that has been proved to be one of the very important ways in which the value chain can be strengthened with timeliness. From design and manufacture to test and market to service, there is a value chain. And where do we need to collaborate with other companies? How can we achieve optimized growth and how can we reach a sustainable growth? Depends on the kind of collaborative network we are able to forge across the value chain. So the decision again is that we should entrench ourselves for perpetuity or should we exit at the earliest opportunity? The answer could be somewhere in between on a contextual basis. If we are able to provide to a startup or if the startup is able to provide for itself a judicious combination of organic and inorganic development, the value chain, value creation for the startups would be optimized. So what are the factors which are there in terms of decision making? What kind of scale I should have in each of the value chain components? Second, what kind of scope I should have in terms of different product market groupings we should have? Should we have a relationship in a limited period or for a longer period? What is the kind of value chain we should consider for collaborative networking? Should it be partial value chain or full value chain? So between scale and scope, between limited period and long period and between partial value chain and full value chain, there are certain decision making ideas, there are certain decision making options which if judiciously exercised, they can provide value chain optimization for a startup. So when we say this, we also come to grips with the founder manager transformational issues. As we said earlier, during the early phase of a startup, it is very important that the ownership and management are kept together and there is complete commitment from both the sides of an individual persona that I am owning this and I should make it work. That helps very much in the entry phase. But in the growth phase, there is a requirement for founders to start ceding control to the professionals. And finally, in the renewal phase, we may require a radical transformation of leadership. So as the startup becomes larger, how would it retain its entrepreneurial capability as also grow professionally? That's where constitution as a business unit, constitution as a functional unit or as a business unit will become important. So as a hypothesis, we can always say that no professional would be able to bring to a startup the same level of passion which the founder promoter has been able to provide. That's because the entrepreneurs are of a different class as we have considered in the very first few sessions, and that level of passion and energy cannot be substituted by a professional. But the professional brings a different set of competencies and different set of approaches to development of a firm. So startups need to find ways and means of institutionalizing the entrepreneurial capability, institutionalizing the entrepreneurial passion and also the feel which the promoter has towards market development, towards product development through diversified professionalization. It cannot be just one for one replacement of a founder by a professional. It should be a real search for an entrepreneurially oriented professional to fill the gap that would be created if an entrepreneur were to move out. So, leadership transitions are an extremely important point. So, if we have professional passion, and if we say that these three pillars which we have discussed earlier, which is the technology, the efficiency and market, are very important for a startup, how does the organization structure evolve? So, we have on the right side a very classic organization structure where we have a CEO, we have a chief technology officer, we have a chief commercial officer, and chief technological officer will have ops under him, quality, R&D under him, whereas the chief commercial officer will have marketing and service. We could also look at another box where we have a chief corporate officer who will look at various other supportive functions like business planning, business development, finance, corporate activities, corporate affairs, secretarial, legal, etc., etc. So, you have a full-fledged organization. Many of these functions would be undertaken by promoters as part of a multitasking paradigm. But as professionalization happens, this organization structuring becomes very important and it needs to be executed through a talented organization. And once the professionals allow the promoters move out of their companies, the promoters become free to look at other entrepreneurial ventures or pursue social entrepreneurship or just be investors and then help other companies to go up the startup value chain. So, how does one leverage the professional attributes? Now, the Indian psyche has got four quadrants. One is a strong ethic of loyalty. The loyalty ethic tends to be personal to the leader at one level. It also tends to be personal to the company or the institution which one is serving. There are many reasons why, in spite of significant wage differences, people do not move from one area to the other area. While the family circumstances could be one reason, the other reason is that people tend to develop strong institutional roots or linkages with the parent institution with whom they have been working. Therefore, loyalty is one important part of the individual DNA in the Indian system. So, that loyalty, when it is coupled with the startup cause, will be a very significant professional attribute that could be leveraged. Second, frugality. Indian system always looks at developing products with the least cost motive driving operations, which is one of the reasons why the generic pharmaceutical products have been very successful in the Indian market, both as bulk drugs and formulations, because the design of facility is frugal, the facilities equipment is frugal, and the methods of manufacture are frugal. Frugality doesn't mean that quality is compromised by any manner. Frugality means that what is required for the purpose is undertaken. So, if you are looking at designing a clean room or designing a clean corridor in a pharmaceutical factory, there is no need to design a corridor which is, let us say, 10 meter wide, when you do not have products or equipment which have that level of movement requirement of that size. So, the moment you design the corridors, the clean rooms in proportion to the activity which you are undertaking, obviously your HVAC requirements will be downsized and the whole design will become frugal. Similarly, when you have many satellite units than one monolithic unit supplying various services to the facility, then you will be able to get greater economies and the fixed costs of running a service system will be more optimized depending upon the demand requirements. So, there are several ways in which a designer can bring in least cost solutions to facility design. The third one is innovation, which is coming up with creative solutions for solving a problem, and the fourth one is agile multitasking. So, the success of large public sector and private sector corporations in the past has been related to diversified ownership model that is extended to individual organizational units of an enterprise. So, similarly, startups can also use these four capabilities which a typical Indian professional has, which is the loyalty, second is frugality, and third one is innovation, and fourth one is execution, to ensure that the startups are efficient and effective. We discussed earlier that more startups fail than succeed. There is this familiar number of 1 out of 10 startups becoming successful. We have the Illinois model where 61% of the startups have been either active or successful. So, what kind of model should we adopt? India is a capital scarce economy. Right now, startups are getting funded both for the operations as well as for the losses. But how long this bubble will continue? That is a key question. Even a mega investment corporation like SoftBank had to realize that funding of models which are not self-sustaining would work in the long term through the WeWork model. And there are expectations that this kind of investment bubble which funds losses and mindless expansion could be tested by the investor impatience as we go forward. India must look at these kinds of trends and realize also in this process that we are a capital scarce economy and we cannot ill afford replication of the aggressive loss funding model of startups that has been adopted in the West. We need to have a different model which is adaptive to the Indian psyche and which measures every penny of capital we put in to ensure that we have got a good return on that pattern. So, the capitalistic view is of course that survival of the fittest and markets will eventually cover by themselves. So, the view here is that okay, we will fund losses, there could be an investment bubble, many startups would blow up, but eventually fair sense will return to the investors, the startup founders as well as the overall industrial and business system and things will be better. That is the capitalistic view. It also is supported by laissez-faire assumption that we should give total freedom for industries and businessmen to operate and there should not be any policy prescription. So, as a result of that, when this capitalistic view supported by laissez-faire approach works, we have resource profligacy followed by resource drought. There would be economic vicissitudes, whereas we cannot afford to have that kind of roller coaster ride in our startup system. We should have steadiness, we should have scalability, we should have sustainability. So, we need to have a virtuous cycle of continuous growth and employment. We should have minimum wastage in the process and we should have optimized investments as we try to reach our full potential. So, I would propose a reasonably failure-proof model for startups in India. What should it be? It should be typically Indian innovation driven, it should be resource optimized and success seeking rather than market share seeking. We should define what is success. Success is not merely having the highest number of clicks or highest number of footfalls or having highest market share. Success is also having the ability to fund your own operations after the initial gestation period. So, one of the ways in which you can do this is to look at this startup activity in terms of two different streams. One is the R&D stream, second is the manufacturing and commercialization stream. Typically, the way it happens in the current startup situation is that the founder comes up with a very novel idea, very brilliant idea, which excites the investors and the investors are willing to write checks, not merely in terms of developing the product, also in terms of capturing a market. So, as a result, even as a product is getting developed as an R&D product, there is an anxiety on the part of the founder to make the product reach to the market as early as possible. In this process of trying to fly two tracks at the same time, two things happen. One, product development is compromised. Two, the total resource requirement which is required for putting a startup onto a commercialization stage is underestimated. Therefore, one of the ways in which you can handle this is to constitute all startups first only as R&D companies and fund accordingly. So, constitution as an R&D company means what? It means that there should be a reasonable understanding of the development time cycle for a product, including alpha testing and beta testing, and ensuring that what comes out is a fully proven product. And that timeline could be 1 year for certain type of products and it could be 2 to 3 years for certain other types of product. So, when a startup is constituted as an R&D company and as also funded, then the entire investor founder dynamics will be different. Secondly, it should move to the regular startup stage once the MVP is validated, and then they should get the venture capital of much larger levels so that it can move on the commercialization cycle as per a calibrated form. Once this product is test marketed, venture capital funding should be more aggressive and must be made available. Then early growth stage must be utilized to establish the scale sustained balance in the marketplace. And finally, series funding round should drive scalability with sustainability, and that by that point of time the startup would become a mainstream company. The key difference in this model compared to the existing model which is operating in the country is that startups will be seen as R&D companies prima facie before they move into a R&D cum manufacturing company as the minimum viable product is tested. So, the separation of R&D and manufacturing stages of the startup journey provides multiple benefits, and it ensures that the R&D is never conducted in the field. R&D is conducted in the laboratory in the proper manner and the product is properly developed.